Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the absence of opportunity. And the United States is a country where you have both freedom and abundant opportunities. And moving to the United States has given me both. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knit family. I was the third of four children. And the best thing that my parents gave me was the gift of education. Even though I came from a poor family, they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. But what my parents did was that they instilled in us the value of faith, hard work, and not giving up. They made us realize that if you put in the work, you will definitely get the reward. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. I got my first job at the age of 14. My job was on a construction site. My duties were to move concrete on a large pan from one end of the construction site to another one. I worked on that day from around 6 in the morning to about 7 at night. At the end of the day, the employer refused to pay me. And the reason was because she did not authorize the foreman to hire me. So I worked from sunup to sundown and didn't get paid. That tore up my spirit. And from that moment on, I decided that I was going to become a lawyer. And I was going to use every ounce of strength within me to fight against injustice, regardless of how powerful the opponent is. I am a man that worked my way up from nothing. I know what it means to feel like you're being unfairly treated, and I'm the person that can stand up to opponents regardless of how big or how powerful they are. Welcome to this episode of Legal Angle. My guest today is Judge Michael Holbrook. He has been a judge of the Court of Common Pleas in Franklin County for since 2005. Welcome to the show, Judge Holbrook.
Well, thank you for having me, Emmanuel.
And thank you for coming. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, I was born and raised here in Columbus. I grew up on the south side of Columbus. Um, I really enjoyed your intro because it does bring up some points. We were always told we weren't good enough. And I had a teacher named Geneva Jackson. She taught Spanish. And she was about 4 foot tall, but she was a very powerful lady. And she called me Miguelito, little Mike. And she said, the only thing that can stop you is you. So I appreciate what your words were. You see where I'm at now. I worked very hard. I went to Ohio State undergrad, capital law. I've been as a trial lawyer for 22 years before I came to the bench in 2000. January 1st, 2005 is when I started. I've been on the bench. This is my 18th year, and I enjoyed what I do. I've handled some big cases. I was in a lot of media cases over the last couple of years. And I think the issues are very important that you wish to discuss. So I have 3 kids. One of my sons is a prosecutor. My other daughter does internet advertising. The other one teaches class at Corning Glass. And I just became a grandpa. I have a beautiful granddaughter. A little bit about it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. What does it feel like to be a new grandfather?
I haven't gotten to enjoy it because as a judge, we have to run for our job every 6 years. So I've been a little busy with the campaign, but she's a sweetheart every chance I get to see her. She's got the best smile out there. And, all grandpas will say that, but I think mine's kind of special.
Wow, that's awesome. And you mentioned
Well,
that you grew up in
kids,
Columbus.
our kids and our grandkids are our legacy. We have to pay attention to them. We have to support them. We have to give them the guidance, and that's important.
Yes, it is important. Yeah, you mentioned that you grew up in Columbus. What was it
Yeah.
like as a kid to grow up in
Well,
Columbus?
down the south side, it was a hardworking blue collar neighborhood. I mean, it was a good foundation. We were able to play in the streets, which I see kids not able to do that today, and it's disappointing. Um, I was a brother. I had four brothers. My mom was about 5'3", and I think she would throw the dinner in the middle of the table and duck because I'm kind of like the run of the group. So, it was a good, wholesome environment we grew up with. Um, I was very proud of the neighborhood down there that I grew up with. And I also was able to have access to Ohio State, which I learned more about the world than one could possibly imagine. The world's a very interesting place with all kinds of cultural things that, that are kind of important for us to learn.
So,
So,
growing up
growing
on
up
the south
on the
side of
south side
Columbus,
of Columbus,
what made you
what
decide to go
made
to
you
law
decide
school?
to go to law school? Well, when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to become a judge, and I thought the wigs were real cool, like the British judges wear, but we don't wear those. So I always had that ambition. I enjoyed being a lawyer, and it was important to me to help the neighborhood, to help people. And that's what my practice was. I defended people that were charged with crimes. I did divorce cases for people breaking up. I represent people in their litigation. So it was always there. And the story behind becoming a judge, we had a judge in town, Jim Pearson. He was like a dad to me, and we would go fishing. And we were in a trout stream in West Virginia when he convinced me to finally run, because when I was a lawyer, the politics and the judicial races stink. So I was kind of shying away with it, and he convinced me. And that's when I started working to become a judge. And it was one of the best decisions outside of my children that I ever made.
Hmm. So, you knew you wanted to become a judge as a kid?
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
think about it. Most people don't realize we impact the general public more than any governor, than anyone out there. Just think of some of the cases I've presided over. I had the nationwide rape case where there were 421,000 plaintiffs across the United States in a class action. I had the gambling law cases when Strickland was trying to change the gambling law instead of letting the legislature do it. I was getting letters from all over the place. Earlier this year, I had the Husel murder trial. We were on national television for almost 3 months. So you can make impact. We do in our jobs. Like, I really can't talk about it, but I have like the BCI case about record keeping on criminal records. So we get all these important type cases that come to us, and we do make a difference. It's more than just the criminal. The criminal affects people because of its effect of the streets. But the civil side, the other thing about that I missed, we're also the state capital, so we get all the litigation involving government. An example, I had the bridge case in Cleveland where they were fighting over the arcs. I got to learn more about architecture than anybody ever would want to know. But it's just part of the job. It's a wonderful job in the sense you learn a lot of stuff. But on the other hand, it's an important job where we help people and how we run our courtroom. That makes sense.
It does make
It
sense.
does make sense.
What was it like for you at Marion Franklin High School?
Well, I grew up, Marion Franklin was half people of color and half white, poor. So it was kind of an interesting mix. And there was a group of the honor students that I was part of that got to see all angles. So it gave me an appreciation because I look out there and I don't, in my job, I can't have the liberty of considering somebody's color, their sex, their sexual preferences, their age. I have to do justice. And I have to take those things into consideration in finding a solution sometimes, culturally. But, you know, it gave me a good foundation for what I do today. I mean, diversity has its detriments, but it also has things that one can appreciate in the sense that I learned cultural things. That's important because everybody brings something nice to the mix. And the sooner we start being concerned about human rights and human beings, the better off we'll be, but it may not be during my lifetime. It's unfortunate. You know, there's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of bad people, granted. But, you know, when the legislatures are legislating morality, it gets a little difficult sometimes. You know, we're about ready to face with the Dobbs decision, all these issues about abortion. There's currently a case in Cincinnati where they stopped the implementation of the heartbeat bill. And these are the types of cases the courts do. So it's also the other side of it, ethically, we can't talk about what our opinions are, okay? Because we have to be fair and impartial. And that gets difficult sometimes. But it's an important thing that we do because I want to give everybody a fair shot when they come in. I'm holding a decision in my hands that affects not only the person there, but their family, the victims' families. So it's important that I get as much information as possible. If I have a question, I'm not afraid to ask. So I acquire the knowledge I need to try to get a solution. I mean, there's some cases like others where we're very what we can do, you know, mandatory time or such. But the more information I have, the more chance I have to possibly get a resolution. And the thing about the job is the murders, the rapes and stuff, you kind of, I don't want to say get used to it, but they're easier to deal with than the kid on the streets who's got a heroin problem and you're trying to break them of the habit. And unfortunately, the streets are a cruel mistress and they take kids. I've lost 37 kids that were on probation to the streets since I've been on the bench. And those are the ones I stay up at night not being able to sleep over. Because there, you try your best with it, but is there one more thing I could have done? And that makes it difficult sometimes. You know, I had a guy who did a double homicide. It was a brutal murder, the first one. He also shot 2 other people in the face, and it was just horrible facts. And then he shoots his best friend over a $60 dope deal. I gave him a long time, life sentence before he goes to the parole board. Okay? That was a gentleman who clearly shouldn't have done what he did. And, you know, it was a solution at the time. The kids, I see a young kid who's had some strikes when he was young. He's got no real guidance at home, and you try to find units. Pastor Lamar on the south side, down there at Family Baptist, he's taken a couple of my people and turned them around. He's got a deacon down there that was somebody in trouble with me. He agreed to take them on. And look what, he's now a very positive influence in the community. So those are the ones that make you feel real good, okay? But it's all part of the job.
It's all part of the job. How do you handle the mental and emotional effect of some of these tragic cases?
Well, part of my job, to do it efficiently, I have to let things go. And there are cases, my worst sex offender case will never leave my mind. This was a guy that made his 9-year-old do water sports and other sexually deviant behavior to him. Okay, I gave him life without parole ×4 consecutive plus 10 years. Okay, I don't ever want him out on the streets for what he did with that 9-year-old. I watched that kid testify on the stand at the age of 11 to stuff that most adult women would have no knowledge on. And that one bugs me. I can't get that one out of my head, never will be able to. But I did the right thing. And, you know, you live with it, you don't forget it, but you live with it. I got murders like that too. I've got a young kid that sticks in my mind every day. He had turned himself around. He'd gotten a great job. He had gotten into a land contract on a home to get his house. He's out there mowing his grass, and there's a drive-by that occurs, and he kills him dead. And it's just like, oh my God. Those are the ones you don't forget. The rest of them you can pretty much move along, let them go. I mean, I had a lawyer once say, well, we talked about this 6 months ago. If you think I remember something from 6 months ago in this job, because we're busy, then I don't remember it, that's a good thing. If I remember it, it's not necessarily a good thing because it's in my memory. You're whirling.
Photos and videos that
Did I lose you?
a lot of people cannot even imagine.
There you are.
Yes. Yeah, welcome back, Your Honor. Yeah, I was just saying that you get to see a lot of horrible videos and photos and listen to those testimonies. And when you get back home at night, how do you process that?
You let it go. I'll give you an example, though. Certainly others don't forget. One of the worst things is a murder trial when the coroner comes on the stand. And I had this very nice elderly lady. She was the mom. And the first coroner picture is always the decedent laying on a stainless steel slab, but naked. So before we started the witness, I walked out and talked to the mom personally. And I said, this will be very disturbing. Do you really want to be in the room? I wasn't trying to show her out or be overly protective, but I wanted her to know what the first picture was going to be on the screen. Just because I've done so many of these, I know what that's going to be. And she said, I'm strong enough. And as soon as that picture came on the screen, she ran out of the room. Those are the things that I also think that are important, because people really don't know a lot about the courtrooms other than what they see on TV court shows. There is some really graphic stuff. We had a homicide scene where the two had been taken out. They were still alive. The one had been shot with a .40 caliber gun at about 8 feet and 3 into the head. And just seeing that picture just makes you want to lose lunch. But I've been doing it for so long, I'll never be used to it, but I can accept that it's on the screen.
And talking about TV coverages, recently you handled the case of Dr. Husel, which is the doctor that was accused of administering too much painkillers that ended up killing the patient. Can you give us a background about that case?
Well, originally it was 25 counts of murder for injecting fentanyl, but it was a little bit more complex than that. He was a doctor that worked in the emergency or in the ICU unit, and these patients were all in terminal status. They were going to go into what they call palliative care. Palliative care in Ohio is the last moments. Some people call it hospice. It's the last moments, and people under Ohio law could die a natural death. Well, the whole question revolved around the amount of dosages that were used of fentanyl. There's no doubt the doctor ordered them. Most of them were taken out of the emergency unit, and this wasn't an emergency proceeding. They were administered to them in large doses with Versa, which is what they call a paralytic. A paralytic is a drug that paralyzes you. They usually give it to people when they want to put the respirator in them so that they can breathe easily with the respirator, and the respirator does all the work. And they wear off, but it immediately shuts down your ability to breathe. So he was administering this cocktail, and he was doing it late at night, and the nurse would administer the dosages, and it would basically, the people would stop breathing and there'd be the end of their life. So that was the underlying nature of the charges. And it was a well-tried case in ways, in other ways not so much. But the sum and substance of it was the jury didn't, and talking to them afterwards, didn't think he was innocent, but didn't think the state had proved him guilty of murder. And so that's why they had the not guilty verdict.
Thank you. And the case generated a lot of media attention, especially the national media.
Mm-hmm.
Was that surprising to you?
No, we anticipated when I drew it. The first thing I did was I called a conference with all the media. I invited them down. We had a talk about how we would run the courtroom, okay? Because the media being in the courtroom, they have the right to be there in most cases, okay? But it should be controlled. So I explained to them what the basic rules of the courtroom were. Rule number one, no jurors on film. The jurors are there as volunteers. They're doing their civic duty, and under no circumstance should they ever be on film. I limited it to one camera. Court TV was not happy because they always want 3, okay, to get all the action shots. Well, that's not what it's about. It's about the jury there in that situation. So they weren't allowed to do it. They could see the witness stand. They could see me. There were some times where I was like the meme of the week in the dispatch. One was when I went like this because I couldn't believe what the lawyers were saying on the floor. And the other one was me bending over, waiting for them to do a sidebar. It looked like I was crying or praying, one or the other. So there was some downside on that. I'd had some back issues, and they had me in an uncomfortable chair. So I mentioned to my bailiff that, I wish I had one of my muscle relaxers to loosen up my back. Oh, the trolls on the internet where we have a drug addicted judge. These things are not addictive. They make me uncomfortable, but they don't change my ability to perceive or anything. But this is the type of things. I have a group in Texas based upon the coverage that would not only wants to impeach me, which we don't impeach judges, but also would like to see me drugged through the streets and probably hung. So, you get all the trolls and you just don't pay attention to them. But it's important that we do the media. And one of the things that occurred during the trial, after every session, I would meet with the media to answer their questions on what happened that day in court. It wasn't to give my opinion of how anybody was doing anything or anything. It was to give them the legal knowledge of what the proceedings were about that day and to answer their questions, okay? And it wouldn't be my opinions, it'd be factual information about how the legal system works. I did that almost every day during the trial because I thought it was important that the press understand the nature of it, because you have novices reporting, and I don't want them to get it wrong because it could affect the trial, it could affect the coverage, it could affect a bunch of stuff. So that's why I did it. The Chief Justice agreed that it was a wonderful thing I did, and it's part of our duties as a judge to deal with the press. I know some judges hate it, but, you know, I find it's better to, the old song, the old art of war thing, have your neighbor closer, have your enemy closer. And I just dealt with the press up right on it. I would answer their questions. If there were motions, like there was a motion to dismiss file, I explained to them what a motion to dismiss was and what we had to do in a hearing. So just educational type stuff. And I think it's important that the press get it right, because people see this at home every day. I don't know how many people watch that trial, but I can't walk through the city of Columbus now without somebody coming up to me and talking to me about that trial. You know, it ruined a date one night. You know, I had 3 people come up to the table at Scally's, wanted to talk to me. I had a lawyer walk through. I'm on an internet conference. I'll talk to you later.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, I'm in court right now. So.
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay, where were we? I apologize.
Yeah, you were talking about you had a dinner ruined because of this case.
Oh yeah, I was out on a date. I had 3 people come up to the table on 3 different occasions, one person at a time, wanting to talk about the trial. And the poor young lady, it was our first time out. And after that, she's like, you know, you're just too popular. I don't want to be around you, you know? It probably worked out.
And handling the press almost every day during the trial, did you have to receive some kind of media training? How did you come about that plan?
Well, I've been around a while, so I knew what our media structure was. When I did our first meeting, I listened to what their questions were, because that can tell you sometimes more than what them telling you is. Okay, and trying to figure out what the parameters need to occur. If I had a question, one of the reporters from the dispatch that started the coverage, I felt pretty comfortable in asking him the question, you know, giving me details about it. And, you know, you learn very quickly what angle each of the press members are at. And it's like, Court TV is a big fan of Jose Baez. So when they interviewed me, it was about my interaction with him. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll answer your questions, you know? So it gets a little dicey some days, but I find if you just have patience and you listen instead of just talking, sometimes you can figure out the answer yourself. People are very good at telling you what to do, but they're very seldom listen to what the situation is. And that's one of the key things of being a good judge. You got to be a great listener, and you got to be able to ask the appropriate question that goes with it. That comes with experience sometimes it's a gift. But, you know, all in all, the press is one of those things, once you figure out their agenda, then you can usually figure out how to deal with them. That makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does. During the trial, you received a lot of angry emails, angry phone calls, people calling you to get off the case. How did you handle those kind of negative feedback coming from total strangers?
Well, it didn't change what I was doing, okay? You're gonna have, we affectionately call them trolls on the internet that are gonna always criticize, and clearly, if you look at their criticism, they don't know what they're talking about. I didn't treat the trial any different than I would treat any other trial. So, you know, you kind of get used to it. I can remember when I first took the bench 18 years ago, Tommy Thompson, who was one of our judges, great judge, said, Mike, you're going to piss off half the county any given day. So get over it and just do your job, be the rogue, take care of business. And that was some of the best advice I had out there. You know, I grew up, you know, if you're going to say something bad about me, say something bad about my mom and we can get busy. okay? But somebody's comment on, he doesn't know the rules of evidence. Yeah, right. You know, I know the rules of evidence, I was right. You know, anybody that knew the rules knew that I was right on all my decisions, you know. And we had some challenges, but I think I was right. I was fair. If there was a problem, I gave the lawyers an opportunity to fix it without me laying the heavy on them. You know, people have their opinions. I'm going to piss off somebody every day. Okay? Sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
But I do my job. And my camera dropped a bit. Let me get it leaning back over. Okay?
Yes. Was there a time during the trial that you fear for your safety?
Nah. The only time I feared for anything was after the verdict. I had the deputies come up and escort the jurors out separately all the way to their cars. Okay? And we did it with the press thinking that they would have a shot at them. And I gave each of the jurors the press's contact information if they wanted to talk to them. And I explained to them, you're not required to, you know, you made your decision, your duty is discharged. If you want to talk to them and explain it, fine. If you don't want to have anything to do with it, don't call them. So we snuck them out of the building. And that was the only time I was worried about anybody's safety. And it wasn't for the danger of it, but it was more from the harassment, because I could see the reporters running down the hallway with the mic saying, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? These jurors just gave up 9.5 weeks of their lives. Okay? Why should they have that unless they ask for it? You know, that was the only time I was in fear of anything. I've gotten threats far more dangerous than that. Okay? And threats we took very seriously. I had one probably 15 years ago. It was a robbery trial involving Aryan Nation. And I got one of those things you see in the Clint Eastwood movies with the magazine cut out with all this threats on there about my safety. Well, we took that one very seriously. There was roving police cars around the house and stuff like that. My kids were little, so we took it very seriously. Nothing happened out of it, but I thought our precaution did it. They would check vehicles coming in and out of the courthouse more thoroughly. We have a wonderful system for judges' security. So once I'm in the building, once I get through the gate, I'm safe all the way in because of security issues. Now, that doesn't mean someone will come up through the courthouse, but we have security downstairs and all entrances getting into the courthouse. So generally, you're safe here. I was more concerned about it being around my family. So we made sure that we were out there, checked vehicles all the time, you know, just in case someone wanted to, how should I say, give me a special gift, you know. But, you know, you got to take them seriously. You know, I had another one where kids rolled up to me in the middle of a murder trial and said, that's the guy trying our buddy. We know where he lives.
Wow.
You know, again, you take it serious. You know, we had another judge here where defendant's family spouted off at him. We took that one serious. Now, I got people that hate me all the time. I'm not as much worried about them, but you do take in consideration security of everybody you're around in your private life. You know, they changed the law, so it used to be our addresses were mandatorily required to be exposed because we run the office, and they changed the law so that our home addresses are no longer public record, but they're with the Board of Elections to assure that our residency is, you know, that type of stuff. The bigger problem for security has been people like trying to lien properties. Judge McGrath, a couple years ago, he was trying to get a home improvement done He found out that a sovereign citizen had liened his property to like $2 million, and he couldn't get a loan. So they had to go fix it. Okay, they changed a little bit about filing liens. But think about it. You can't get a dime from anywhere because of this false allegation. Those are the types of things that are impactful mostly. But we do take all security into consideration, and that's security for everybody in the courtroom. You know, everybody complains about the defendant and the deputies. The deputies are there to protect the defendant too, okay? Because I've seen more hostility from victims' families than I've seen necessarily coming from the defendant's side. I had one father come over the thing and started to go at him. The deputies had to block him off. You know, he was going to cause some serious physical harm. But it can be emotional at times. The best thing to do is to calm people down before you even bring the defendant out. Say, we're going to go through this process. Everybody's going to get a chance to speak. Speak to me. Don't speak to them. You know, like the defendant speaking saying something nasty to the victim's family or something. Don't speak to them. Speak to me. I'm the one making the decision. And you can usually cool down a courtroom. We had one incident. It was a resentencing from Judge O'Neill that I drew her docket. And I walk in there and people are pointing like a gun type figure at each other. So what I did was I had called down to my chief deputy. I said, let's clear the courtroom. Everybody gets a 50 stand. A 50 stand is where they do a record check to see if there's any warrants on the person entering the courtroom. And it kind of resolved the problem. So you pay attention to it. We also it was an assassination murder that occurred on the east side. 4 defendants. We went down and set up the security. We went down with the deputies. We had IT down there. We had anybody that was a player was down there, and we set up the security for that trial. And there are tools we can use, but we also wanted to make sure that the deputies had sufficient room to be able to control the circumstances, whether it's protection of the defendants or controlling the defendants. We wanted to make sure that there was no easy access to the jury. We wanted to make sure that there was a clear path to the witness stand. You know, we worked through all the issues. We spent probably 4 hours or so going through the various issues, making sure the deputies were secure in the concepts that we were using. And it has been the standard pattern usually for most judges to use when they do have cases of that size. Because we did spend a lot of time. We checked through our providers and the deputies and the individual security and the security for the whole court facility. So we made sure that everybody was on the other page, that everybody was communicating as to what was going on. So these are the types of things we do to protect, because my job is to protect everybody in the courtroom, including the jury, including the defendant, including the plaintiff, you know, and we can't afford a mistake, okay? I see too many of these videos on there where people get hurt. I don't want that ever to be involving my courtroom, okay? That's why we spend the effort ahead of time to make sure that it is safe, that the defendant's just as safe as the victim's family, and that everybody understands there's zero tolerance for anybody that crosses the line. I had to send a mom and 2 daughters in a case to jail for contempt because they crossed the line, okay? And they crossed it big time. But nonetheless, okay, there was criminal charges that came out of it afterwards and such, but that aside. You know, we take this seriously because I want people to walk in the courtroom and feel safe. Okay, you can't always get that, but I'm going to do everything in my power to assure that that occurs. I don't want to be the YouTube video of the month, you know, for having somebody jump the thing and beat the heck out of the defendant, or the defendant getting loose. You know, we take it seriously. I go on and on about courtroom security, but it's an important thing. I want the public to understand, when you walk into Judge Holbrook's courtroom, it's a safe place.
You
And,
take safety seriously.
yeah, you've got to, you know. How would I sleep at night if someone got hurt in my courtroom because I screwed up? You know, or I didn't take it serious enough? That's something I wouldn't be able to sleep over, you know? So I don't give it an opportunity. That's the best thing I can do in that situation. And if there is a problem, everybody knows the problem exists. What are we going to do to fix it? If it means me having an individual conversation with the victim's family or with the defendant's family, I don't mind. Heck, I'd rather have that conversation up front than to sit there and have to do it after that we've had a problem. It's just like, we want to make this fair. And that's the essence of my job, make it fair. Okay? Everybody gets, when you walk into my courtroom, if you've got something to say about a case, I let you speak. I know it sometimes upsets lawyers, but if they got an input that can help me or change my mind on an issue, I want to know. So I keep an open courtroom. I'm the first out every morning on the bench. You've been down here and lawyers are surprised I'm sitting on the bench. Okay, I stay here till I'm done. Okay, because I have access. I don't go back in my office and hide. Okay, I'm out here to serve the public, and when, like right now, I'm sitting at my bench. Okay, and I want to make a difference.
Thank you. And during the Husel trial, the defense counsel filed a motion to disqualify you from continuing with the case. How did that make you feel as a person?
Well, part of it was my fault. We'd been going through the jury instructions for a couple of days, and the lawyers were kind of reminded me of chihuahuas biting on each other's ankles. They were getting pretty feisty with each other, and I snapped out something I shouldn't have said. I immediately apologized. It was sarcastic. I made the mistake. Okay? Chief Justice was not happy with what I said, but she also realizes that we had been in trial for a long time, and she basically told me I was bad, but she understood the circumstances. So he files this motion. It basically was a delay. Okay? Chief Justice goes through a procedure, and I'm not talking about this. The procedure is someone files a motion to disqualify. The person alleged gets to file a response, and if the Chief Justice wants anything more, they can do so. At that point in time, the Chief Justice decides. And I've had motions to disqualify against me a couple times over the years for various reasons. I've not had one granted. Okay, so it went through the process. It basically delayed the trial a week before we get into closings and get the jury working. Okay, so that was their allegation, that I unfairly prejudiced the defendant in making my comment. The defendant wasn't even present, neither was Mr. Baez, the complainant. We provided the entire transcript instead of the blurb, so the Chief Justice could see exactly what was going on. So, and the Chief Justice made her decision.
Yeah, you are now disqualified.
Nope.
Did the presence of the media affect some of your comments or your behavior or your decisions during the trial?
No, I tried it just like I would try any other trial. Okay, it would be a misjustice for me to treat it special. The only way I can try that case is just another case. I deal with the issues. We basically call balls and strikes. We don't argue. We don't we don't prepare arguments or anything else like that. We officiate and make sure it's right. They comply with the rules, that it's proper procedure inside the courtroom, that there's not any abuses going on, that the jury's protected. So in that way, I wouldn't treat it any different than any other trial I would do. On the other hand, you do have to face the reality that there's a camera on you all the time. You sometimes shouldn't talk, okay, like on breaks, because you don't know if it's on or off, okay? And that's when I had, like I described earlier, the incident where I said I wish I had one on my muscle relaxers for my back, and suddenly I'm a drug addict across the United States, you know? Yeah. So, you know, or they would, I like to kid with my jury to make them comfortable. Like when I greet them first thing in the morning, to give you an example, the first day of trial was one of the jurors' birthday. So I went out to Resch's and got a cake. And it was just a birthday cake for all the jurors, because who can afford Resch's cake, you know, for the 20 jurors I had, you know? So I bought one cake, brought it in, and I was kidding them the first day about the birthday cake as they were coming in and getting comfortable. I wasn't doing it to lessen the events of the proceedings. I was doing it to make them comfortable. And, you know, I got some criticism from them. You know, what's he doing buying them a cake? He's trying to influence them. If my cake influences them, they're not the jury I think they are. Okay? Russians makes a great cake. Okay? But, you know, I did it more to try to make them comfortable. Because here we are, we're asking them to give up all that time. You know, they were there. We started February 1st and at April 30th or something. You know, that's a long time where you're sitting there away. Everybody was worried that they were sequestered. No, they weren't sequestered. They got to go home at night and visit their families. They were instructed not to discuss the case, not to pay attention to the media, not do their own research. And I have jurors in the past that have done that, and I have not been very happy with them. And they had to come back and explain it to me later. Well, so they were criticizing me. He's not a comedian. I know I'm not a comedian. Okay? I'm trying to make that jury comfortable. And it's funny that people would think that I think I'm an amateur comedian. No, I'm a judge. And part of being a judge is making sure that jury's comfortable. They were already encased in these plexiglass things all around them. It was uncomfortable anyway. So anything I could do, we had to drill holes to let sound come through into the plexiglass to make those jurors, because remember, this trial started in the middle of COVID. So we were real concerned. We lost one lawyer during the trial to COVID, okay? And I didn't know if we were going to have to shut down. Well, thank God she hadn't had a lot of contact with people, and everybody was testing negative. So thank God. If someone would tested positive, the trial's down for a week at least, if not 2 weeks. So we were taking all that very seriously. The courtroom was disinfected every night, you know, to try to kill any bugs that may be there. You know, we would make sure if people were in positions where they're close to people, they're masked. You know, it makes trial work uncomfortable, but we had to do what we had to do to make it work. And, you know, some people have said, why didn't you try it closer to election time? That's the last thing I wanted around election time. I wanted to get the trial done. We'd been into 2 years with that trial. And I wanted to get it finished so that we could serve the situation.
Thank you. And at the end of the trial, you opened up the jury room to the press. That was, Why did you do that?
Okay. Judge Brown had 3 jurors downstairs after the verdict. They were walking down the hallway, and the press put mics in their face and asked them why they had the verdict they did. These people hadn't even been deliberating yet. They weren't my jurors, but the press went there. So I was pretty furious, so I went downstairs. And I'd sit in there, and when afterwards I went back and talked to the jury. And I could see they had each of the counts laid out on the wall. We'd brought in some of those paper flip charts, and they had torn off the papers and laid out each one. And, you know, when I'm in this discussion with them, well, we just trying to figure out, I said, that jury worked their tail off. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take you back to the jury room. Okay, I'm going to show you how hard they work. You're not allowed to record anything. Okay? If you get caught, we're done. And I went back and I said, this is how hard this jury works, so you don't disrespect them. And then I let them take a shot, because this jury even had their own rules. It was laid out, rules going down there, basically the rules I told them. Okay, but they laid them out so everybody knew them. So they took a shot at that. I let them take that because they had nothing to do with the case. It was just basically a regurgitation of what I told them to do. And that was the only thing that came out of there, you know. But I brought them back there because the press needs to be educated. I've been doing this 18 years. I've had one runaway jury. And it was over a defense lawyer in a personal injury case. It was like a $25,000 personal injury case. This lawyer upset that jury so much they went $365,000. And it's like, wow. And because they were more upset with the defense lawyer, you know. So I tried to get it resolved. No, the Court of Appeals affirmed me. So they end up paying the $365 plus interest and other such things. So, but that's my only runaway jury in all these times. I've got juries. The first year I had a bunch of Deborah O'Neill's cases left over. I tried, I think, 3 death penalties my first year. One of those juries still gets together every year. They have a meet and greet, how's the kids, how's the grandkids, all that stuff. And they have a good time. They party too hard for me, so I can't go anymore. I'm getting too old. But, you know, they still are friends. The Husel trial, they have a chain where they all talk to each other. They find out what's going on. A couple of them have helped me on the campaign, you know. They walk parades for me. I mean, it's a relationship that most people don't realize that people make. The first jury I was talking about, they were together 3 weeks, okay? And they became friends. They get together, they share pictures of the grandkids and everything, you know? They have a good time, they have a dinner and drinks, and they have a good evening, okay? This jury, I think, will do the same. They had a party right afterwards. One of the jurors has a nice place in New Albany. And, they were out there. They invited Diane to it, and then Jose crashed it. But that's okay. The jurors, it was all about them. I made my New Orleans bread pudding with Jack Daniel's sauce, which was loved. But that's okay. I like to cook.
Yes, apart from liking to cook, you are also known to care for plants. Your chamber is known as the greenhouse. Tell us a bit about that.
I inherit everybody's dying plants, and I bring them back to life, and then they don't want them back. But that's okay. I am a member of the Columbus Bonsai Society, so I love my plants. They're the best pet out there. They don't bark at 4 o'clock in the morning. They don't go on the carpet. And, they're around, and they're very pleasant things to be around. I love the art form. I've worked on bonsai trees for the Daws, and I've worked on some of the plants down at the Columbus Conservatory, so I enjoy the hobby. Columbus has a great bonsai club. It's called the Columbus Bonsai Society. It's $25 a year to be a member. They'll teach you how to do the trees. Most people don't realize, most of them kill their little bonsai trees they buy on the side of the road because they water them too much. Other than that, they'll teach you care. You learn things about plants. And it's therapy, sitting there and trimming a plant up. It's kind of like a solace for me in the sense that I just get away and it's me and this art. Like somebody who likes to paint, it's just an art form. And it brings me happiness. So it's a wonderful hobby. So one of the people had a rubber tree that was about ready to go. I brought it back and it got huge. And it was just taking over my office. I mean, it was like this giant plant coming out of the side of the wall almost. And finally, one of the ladies took it. It was one of the cleaning ladies wanted it for her home. And so I repotted in a bigger pot for her and got everything organized, and she got to take it home. And it's in a good home now. I've got some bonsai trees I put together back there, like my ficuses, which are indoor trees. I'll have them back there. I actually grew a dragon tree from seed, and it's becoming quite the little monster. But yeah, it's kind of the greenhouse of the courthouse. In the old building, I had lights over them. Here we have enough light, and they live a happy existence back there.
Bringing their tree back to life. What do you want the people to remember about you?
That I was fair, that I cared, and I was committed. I do this job because I love getting up every morning and coming in. I can make a heck of a lot more money on the streets as a trial lawyer. That's not the issue for me. The issue is my commitment to change the world in any little way I can do to make it a better place. And this is one of those positions where I have that ability. If I save one kid, it's a good day. If I save two, oh my God, I got a conspiracy going. But that's a positive thing. There are so many people out there that just don't have the guidance, that just don't have an idea of what's right or wrong. Whether it's their family upraising, whether it's their friends, whether it's their, schools, you see all these troubling things. Kids killing kids, kids bringing guns to school. We would have never done that as kids. But how many have we had in Columbus this year? 16 or so, where kids brought guns to school. These are scary things. So I'm committed to make a difference, and I do it every day. I never leave this place where I think I could do something else. I enjoy doing it. I run an open courtroom. You've been down here. You've been in front of me. I would sit there and I want people to walk in and say, I trust the situation. And that's important to me. This is my last time running. I'll be aged out next time. So I've been kidding people, this is your last opportunity to vote for me. Okay? But, as a judge, we cannot start a term at 70. I will turn 70 the summer I would run next. So I can't run. And I don't want to jump off and run for the Court of Appeals. I'm a people person. I can't sit in the ivory tower and write papers, without seeing people. I like people. And so that's why I do it.
Thank you. And what does it mean to you to come on this show, Legal Angle, to educate the community?
Well, I think it's very important for us to educate the public. When I'm out on the campaign trail, I'll sit there and talk about the issues. I can't have an opinion, but I can sure give you facts, and you can make your decision. There's so much misinformation out there on the internet. I think we have to, correct that and give people the actual information so they can make an informed decision. You know, we only have so long on this earth. And I want it to be a better place when I'm gone. Not because I'm gone, but because I made a difference getting there. And I think that's important.
Thank you.
You
We
know,
want it to be a
no one
better
will
place.
remember us, Emmanuel, in 50 years. Well, maybe you'll probably still be alive. You're still young. Okay? But all in all, in 50 years, they might see Judge Holbrook on a plaque or something. But I want my extension to be not only from my family, but from what I did during the time to make it a better world. I know it won't be on TV shows 100 years from now or anything like that. But on the other hand, if I can succeed, we all win. And I think that's important.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on Legal Angle. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you.
It's always a pleasure. You know, I wish we could do more of this type of stuff because it does help people. Okay? People are scared of the legal system, and they shouldn't be. Now, I can understand, I've seen judges across the entire state. I practice in 80 of the 88 counties, and there are some places that are scarier than others. Okay, but it shouldn't be that way. People should have trust in the judiciary, and that's what I want to promote.
Exactly. People should have trust in their judiciary. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you know, look at all the lawyer jokes out there. And lawyers make impact, you know. In your practice, how many people have you helped over the years? And it's the same way here. You know,
Exactly.
we're here. God gave us a calling, okay, to be a better world. And that's what we should do as lawyers. It troubles me when people do stuff for billable hours and stuff just to up their practice. And the client really didn't need it, you know, but we can only change a little bit at a time, but we can always try to change.
Yes.
So,
You can always try to change. Thank you again, Judge Holbrook, for coming on Legal Angle. And for those of you watching the show or listening to this as a podcast, thank you. Until
thank
next
you.
time, take care. Bye for now.
Be blessed and be safe.